Hey everyone, today I'm going to be walking you through how I made the first background for the new Storytime I've been calling Networking Nightmare. I chose the first shot in the Storytime since it's a pretty straightforward composition and I can focus on getting the look right. The canvas size is 3840 by 2160 pixels and I'll be using my own brushes I made for TVPaint. If you're interested in the free brush pack, I've put a link to that in the description. Now in Ghost Stories Part 2 and 3, I went for a simple flat colour background with small line details, which I really wanted to develop here. This first background is also the style frame and sets the look for the rest of the animation, so I've got to make sure I like it before I move on to the rest. To start, I lower the opacity of the sketch to remind me of the layout I want, and use the filled shape tool to block out the main shapes in the image. I use TVPaint's guideline tool to create a grid that separates the canvas into 9 sections. If you haven't heard of this before, this is called the rule of thirds, and helps with drawing the viewer's eye around the canvas. If you have a point of interest in your image, like a character or object, it can be positioned along the lines or places where they meet for a stronger composition. I decided the fence and pillars in the foreground were a little high in the sketch, so I moved them down. In the final image, these pillars and fence will be separate from the rest of the background, so I'll be able to create depth if I need to adjust them later or add in a camera move. I then added some clouds and trees to take up some of the negative space around the building, since it did look a little bare. I followed up with a path, bike stands, the card swiping pillar by the front door, and the roof of the building. I use the cut brush tool a lot to copy and paste segments of the design so it's a little more even, and then the spline tool, which I barely ever use, to make some nice curving lines for the roof. Much better than if I'd done it freehand. By using a shape tool, the pillars and buildings are very straight and even, and lose a lot of the hand-drawn charm I wanted in the design. I'd originally planned to use the shape tool to block and then go over everything by hand, but before that I wanted to see if the line work I planned to use would fit in with what I had done already, so I didn't have to redraw it. Time is very precious at every stage of making an animation, so if there's a shortcut or way to save time, I'll do it. The point of a style frame is to really figure out what works and what doesn't. So while I liked the composition and the line work did match well with what I wanted to do, I knew that in all future backgrounds I would start off blocking shapes in grayscale, so I could check the tones weren't too similar before I added the colours on top. To fix this, I then used the colour replacer tool in TVPaint to experiment with different variations and referred back to the colour script regularly to see how the final background and my plans matched up. In the colour script, I'd made sure to keep all my layers separate and with their original blending modes. If I just merged everything down, it would have been much harder to recreate the colour combinations I'd used before. As I went along, I kept adding in more line details and some texture with the grainy brush from my TVPaint brush pack. Once I decided on the placement of lines and I was happy with the texture and the colour, I went in on a new layer and redid the line details to be a little more polished, but they've still got that slightly wobbly hand-drawn charm I wanted. Overall, I'm really pleased with the look of this background and I'm excited to see how the rest come together for this animation. Thank you so much for watching. As always, if you have any questions, leave them in the comments below and I'll be back with another video real soon. Bye!